Remember when a pint actually tasted like beer? When you could walk into any pub, order a lager and know exactly what you were getting. Real malt, real hops, real brewing, not whatever chemical cocktail they're passing off as beer today. For decades, the British public trusted the names on the taps, the brands our fathers drank, the logos we grew up with, the pints that built this nation's pub culture. But somewhere along the way, something changed. The recipes got cheaper, the ingredients got worse, and the corporations behind these brands started prioritising profit over pint quality. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the British beer industry. We've dug through recall notices, ingredient lists, and what real drinkers are saying to rank 8 of Britain's most recognised beer brands that you should absolutely avoid. And yes, we'll reveal the 2 that are actually still worth your money. Will your go-to pint be exposed, or does it make the cut? Let's find out. Number 8, Carling. We're starting with Britain's best-selling lager. Yes, you heard that right. The most popular beer in the country is also one you should seriously reconsider putting in your glass. Carling has dominated British supermarkets and pub taps for decades. It's everywhere, it's cheap, it's familiar, and that's exactly the problem. When you're selling that much volume at that lower price, something has to give, and what gives is quality. Let's talk about what's actually in your pint. Carling uses rice and maize as adjuncts instead of pure malted barley. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with adjuncts in brewing, but here's the thing. They use them to cut costs, not improve flavour. Rice and corn are cheaper than barley. They lighten the body, dilute the taste, and create that watery, forgettable experience so many people complain about. One drinker summed it up perfectly. Carling tastes like someone described beer to an alien, and the alien tried to recreate it from memory. But it gets worse. In 2019, Carling quietly reduced the alcohol content in their standard lager from 4.1% to 3.7%. They called it responding to consumer trends toward lower alcohol. The reality, lower alcohol means lower duty tax. It's a cost-cutting measure dressed up as health consciousness. And here's the kicker. Despite being cheaper to produce, the price you pay hasn't dropped accordingly. You're getting less alcohol, less flavour, less beer, but paying nearly the same amount. That's the Carling business model in a nutshell. Number 7, Foster's. The Australian beer that isn't even Australian anymore. If there was ever a brand built entirely on marketing lies, it's Foster's. Here's what they don't want you to know. Foster's is barely sold in Australia. The Australians rejected it decades ago. It's brewed under license in Manchester by Heineken, yet it's still sold to British consumers as this authentic taste of the outback. The whole thing is a performance. But the real issue isn't the fake Australian identity. It's what's in the can. Foster's uses the same cost-cutting playbook as Carling. Adjunct grains, minimal hopping, maximum carbonation to hide the lack of actual flavour. One reviewer described it as fizzy yellow water with a hint of regret. And in 2023, there was a quiet quality control issue that never made major headlines but absolutely should have. Multiple batches of Foster's in the UK market were reported to have off flavours, described by drinkers as sour, metallic, and like licking a tin can. Heineken never issued a formal recall, but they did pull certain batches from distribution. The problem? They never told consumers which batches were affected. If your beer occasionally tastes like metal and the company won't even acknowledge it properly, that tells you everything about how much they respect their customers. Number 6, Stella Artois. Ah, Stella, wife beater, wife beater. However you want to spell it, the nickname alone should tell you this beer has a reputation problem. Stella Artois has spent millions trying to rebrand itself as a premium continental lager. The fancy chalice glasses, the French-sounding name, the advertising that makes it look like you're drinking in a Belgian cafe. But strip away the marketing and you're left with an overpriced, mass-produced lager that's as far from craft brewing as you can get. Let's talk ingredients. Stella uses maize as an adjunct. Again, cost-cutting dressed up as brewing technique. And while they love to mention their noble hops, they conveniently leave out that the majority of their hop character comes from hop extract, not actual whole hops. It's faster, cheaper, and gives them more control. But it also means you're missing out on the complexity and depth that real hops provide. But here's the real scandal. In 2022, Stella Artois was involved in a lawsuit in the United States for false advertising. They marketed their beer as imported from Belgium, when in reality most of it sold in North America was brewed in licensed facilities nowhere near Belgium. The lawsuit was settled quietly. Now, the UK versions are brewed in Britain under license from AB InBev, the massive corporate conglomerate that owns hundreds of brands. You're not drinking Belgian brewing tradition, you're drinking corporate efficiency. And let's be honest about the alcohol issue. Stella built its reputation on being strong, but over the years they've reduced the ABV from 5.2% down to 4.6% in the UK. Less alcohol, same aggressive marketing, same inflated price point. Number 5, Carlsberg. Probably the best lager in the world, probably the most dishonest slogan in advertising history. Carlsberg has been a staple in British pubs for generations, but the brewing giant has repeatedly shown that cost-cutting and corner-cutting are more important than the customer experience. In 2015, Carlsberg UK had to recall thousands of bottles after glass fragments were found in their production line. Glass in beer bottles. The Food Standards Agency issued an urgent warning, and Carlsberg pulled products from shelves. But here's what's disturbing. It took customer complaints before they acted. Multiple people had already purchased and potentially consumed affected bottles before the recall went public. That's not a one-time quality control slip. That's a systemic failure in production safety. But the issues don't stop there. Carlsberg uses what's called high-gravity brewing, a process where they brew a super strong beer and then water it down before packaging. Why? Because it's more efficient. They can produce more beer in less time using less equipment. But it also means your pint has been diluted and the flavour profile suffers dramatically. One brewer described it bluntly: high-gravity brewing is for accountants, not for people who actually care about beer. And just like the others, Carlsberg has steadily reduced alcohol content over the years while maintaining premium pricing. You're paying for a legacy brand that no longer delivers legacy quality. Number 4, Tennent's Lager. Scotland's other national drink, and honestly, that's being generous. Tennent's has been brewed in Glasgow since 1885, and for decades it was a solid, respectable lager. But the modern version, it's a shadow of what it used to be. The brewery has been sold, restructured and corporatised so many times that any connection to traditional Scottish brewing has been completely severed. Let's talk about the ingredient quality. Tennent's uses predominantly maize and rice as adjuncts, keeping actual malted barley to a minimum. The result is a thin, watery lager with barely any body and even less character. One Scottish drinker put it perfectly: Tennent's tastes like a beer-flavoured wet cardboard. But here's where it gets interesting. In 2018, Tennent's was forced to remove the phrase "Scotland's favourite pint" from their advertising after complaints that it was misleading. The Advertising Standards Authority ruled that they couldn't prove the claim. Think about that. A brand so synonymous with Scotland couldn't even prove Scottish people actually preferred it. And in recent years, there have been multiple complaints about inconsistent quality between batches. Some cans taste fine, others taste metallic, sour, or just plain wrong. That level of inconsistency screams poor quality control and a company that's stretched too thin trying to maximise output. Number 3, John Smith's Extra Smooth. This is where we move from disappointing lagers to genuinely problematic products. John Smith's Extra Smooth isn't just low quality, it's practically not even beer anymore. Let's start with the obvious. It's a nitro beer, which means it uses nitrogen instead of carbon dioxide for carbonation. That's not inherently bad. Guinness does it beautifully, but John Smith's uses nitrogen for one reason: to mask how little flavour is actually in the liquid. The nitrogen creates that thick, creamy head and smooth mouthfeel, tricking your brain into thinking there's more substance than there actually is. But once you get past the foam, you're left with something that tastes more like lightly malted water than actual ale. Here's what your grandparents drank versus what you're drinking now. The original John Smith's was a proper Yorkshire bitter with body, flavour and character. Today's Extra Smooth is a marketing gimmick designed to appeal to people who don't actually like the taste of beer. One reviewer nailed it. John Smith's Extra Smooth is what you drink when you want to say you're drinking beer, but you actually hate beer. And in 2021, there were multiple reports of cans being under-pressurized, leading to flat, lifeless pints that tasted even worse than usual. Heineken, the parent company, acknowledged the issue but never issued a formal recall. They just quietly fixed the problem and hoped no one would notice. If you're going to drink a British ale, there are dozens of better options. John Smith's Extra Smooth is not one of them. Number 2, Skol. If you're still drinking Skol in 2025, we need to have a serious conversation. Skol is the beer equivalent of the bottom shelf. It's cheap, it's available, and it's absolutely terrible. This is the beer you buy when you're 18 years old and don't know any better, or when you're buying in bulk for a party where nobody will care what they're drinking. Let's be brutally honest. Skol is brewed to a price point, not to a standard. Every single ingredient decision is made to minimize cost. The barley is minimal, the adjuncts are maxed out, the hops are basically non-existent. What you're left with is fizzy yellow liquid that technically qualifies as beer but brings absolutely nothing to the drinking experience. But here's the really concerning part. In 2014, Skol in the UK market was found to have irregular fermentation in certain batches, leading to off flavours and potential bacterial contamination. Carlsberg UK, which owns the brand, conducted an internal investigation but never publicly disclosed the full extent of the issue. And because Skol is primarily sold in the value segment, often in corner shops and off-licenses serving lower-income communities, the lack of transparency is even more troubling. These are customers who trust that what they're buying is safe, even if it's cheap. One former brewery worker put it bluntly, Skol is what we'd brew when we were training new staff. It's idiot-proof because there's no flavour to ruin. That should tell you everything. Number 1, and the absolute worst, Kestrel Super. We've reached the bottom, the worst of the worst, the beer that should frankly come with a health warning. Kestrel Super is a high-strength lager, clocking in at 9% ABV. It's sold in single cans, usually at off-licenses and corner shops, and it has one target market, people looking to get drunk as quickly and cheaply as possible. This isn't beer brewed for enjoyment. It's beer brewed as a delivery system for alcohol. The taste is harsh, metallic, and aggressively unpleasant, but that's not even the real issue. The real issue is what this product represents. High-strength, cheap lagers like Kestrel Super have been repeatedly linked to alcohol dependency and street drinking problems across the UK. Multiple councils have called for these products to be restricted or banned outright. In 2016, a parliamentary report highlighted that super-strength beers were disproportionately consumed by dependent drinkers and the homeless population. These products are designed and priced to exploit vulnerability. And from a pure quality standpoint, Kestrel Super uses the absolute cheapest ingredients possible, brewed to maximum alcohol with minimum cost. There's no craftsmanship, no tradition, no care. It's industrial alcohol production wearing a beer label. If you're drinking Kestrel Super regularly, this isn't about taste anymore. It's about something much more serious, and it might be time to reach out for help. So what is worth drinking? After all that disappointment, let's end on a positive note. Here are 2 British beer brands that are actually still worth your money. Number 2, Timothy Taylor's Landlord. This is proper British brewing. A classic pale ale from Yorkshire that's been brewed with care since 1858. Real malt, real hops, actual flavour. It's won more awards than almost any other British beer, and for good reason. When you drink Landlord, you're tasting what British beer is supposed to be. Number 1, and the absolute best, Fuller's London Pride. This is it, the gold standard. Fuller's has refused to cut corners, refused to sell out to massive conglomerates, and refused to compromise on quality. London Pride is brewed with 100% malted barley, real English hops, and a respect for traditional brewing methods. It's balanced, flavourful, and genuinely represents the best of British brewing heritage. When you choose Fuller's, you're supporting a brewery that still cares about the craft. So there you have it. From the absolute worst to the genuinely worth it. Did we get it right? What's your take? Let us know your number 1 beer in the comments below. And remember, you deserve better than corporate shortcuts. Demand real beer.